Oh gosh, hello. So really hopeful you can see me. I have had some really difficult technical hitches. I don't know, I should have probably looked before, but there we go, live and learn. No big deal. So here I am, I'm at home in my office, and I've got some questions already sent. If you've got questions that you want me to answer, and please feel free to have a look, to send me. I think I can read comments. If you send them to me, then I will do my best to answer them. So the reason I'm doing the AMA is because my master's is in the impact of narcissistic parenting on children, or rather adult children in therapy, and how a therapist might expect an adult child to present when in therapy. Because I'm doing that, I think it's something that's come up for me over and over again with clients, and it's something that societally there's a big like a culture around parents and about specifically mothers, about how you must love your mother and you must obey your mother, honor, the old adage, which is honor and obey your parents. And actually that's not true for everyone, because parents can be abusive. We see it in the news over and over again about physical abuse. What we don't often see is emotional abuse, and that's just as damaging as physical abuse. So narcissistic abuse particularly is pretty horrific. So I felt it was really important to address that and look at it and understand it as well as possible to help me and to help other therapists remove their own perceptions, preconceptions around the role of a parent and how important that relationship should or shouldn't be, and how a child must obey their parent all the time. So I had some questions sent to me already. I'm going to answer them. The first one is, I'm reading off the sheet because I don't want to get it wrong, so I thought I'd just have it printed out. How does parental or maternal, specifically, narcissism differ from a narcissist in an adult relationship? So that's really important. Really, the behaviours aren't that much different in terms of a narcissist in a adult relationship will still employ the same techniques. They'll still use gaslighting. They'll still be dismissive around your behaviour, your emotions. They'll justify their behaviour. They'll never accept responsibility. They'll drive you crazy, essentially, as an adult in a relationship, and place you in a position of real vulnerability. They'll generally isolate you and remove any outside influence, and also tell others that you're crazy or that you have mental health difficulties. They'll do what's called a smear campaign, so that people who are if you mention anything to somebody else about worries or concerns you've got in an adult relationship, they'll have preempted that and made it look like you're the one with the issues, not them. They're very clever. So the difference with a parental relationship is actually mostly the fact that a child knows nothing else. For a child, the parents, in certainly the first 5 years of their lives, is generally when, I got distracted by the comments, I should be honest and just tell you. Hi Stephanie, I'll answer that in a second. So the difference between a maternal, like a parental narcissist, and an adult relationship narcissist is that the child's whole worldview of themselves and the world and their parents is created by the parents. The parents have huge amounts of control over that, which means that when a parent essentially raises a child just to question everything about themselves or the reality of the parents' parenting, when they deny emotions, when they dismiss emotions, when they justify behaviour, when they gaslight a child, that's all a child knows. Their whole self-perception, well-perception is created by the parents. So the main difference is not being able to escape from it and not having had any kind of reality perception before before you've got into an adult relationship. Unfortunately, it seems the relational patterns repeat. So if you've had a parent narcissist, you are more likely, not necessarily definitely, but more likely going to get into a relationship with a narcissist. So that's really difficult, obviously, because the damage just gets perpetuated and the messages are reinforced by the adult narcissist that you're in a relationship with. So the main differences are the fact that the maternal or paternal narcissist creates the child's worldview, and it's harder for a child to undo and unpick those messages and beliefs that have been instilled by the parent, the narcissistic parent. Here we go. What do you do, though, when you feel worse not being close to your parent than cutting them out of your life? Oh, it's hard. I guess it comes down to what you want to tolerate and what you want to accept for your life. Are you missing the parent, or are you missing the idea of the parent? Because that's quite often what happens, is that we mourn a childhood and a parent that's lost or that we've never known, the ideal parent that we would have liked. Quite often clients have fantasies of being adopted or being rescued, or their real parents are actually normal, kind of, two up, two down, nice, homely people who really nurture their children. Or there's the fantasy of being rescued and actually being a secret prince or princess, and that they are then adored and adorned with lots of love and gifts and nurturing. So feeling worse not being close to your parent than cutting them out of your life, it's about why are you feeling that? Why do you want somebody in your life who is causing you harm, distress, abuse, knowing that you're programmed to accept that you've been conditioned to accept that, and is it them, or is it a ideal parent that you're missing? And are you grieving for somebody that you haven't got? Does that help, Stephanie? I hope so. Let me know if you need any more clarification on that. So the next question I've got from private questions was, and this is a really good one actually, how can a family look so perfect or normal to the outside world but be so toxic inside, and how can that be explained to someone? Okay, so the narcissists are masters of projection. The narcissist will create an image of the perfect nuclear family where the outside world views them as happy, and they view them as perfect, and that the children are obedient and they do everything they're told, and they're quiet and timid, or maybe you've got one who's naughty and they're the rebellious one, and it's just the way they are. It's nothing to do with the parenting or the parenting system. So they're very, very clever at it, and explaining it to somebody, just questioning how they know what they know. How does somebody know that what happens behind closed doors is perfect? Because nobody knows that. Nobody knows what happens when the door shuts. Nobody knows what the mother is like. Just giving some examples of how you've been spoken to, what you were allowed to do, what you weren't allowed to do, whether you had to deny what you wanted all the time, whether you were exploited in a way where you were doing all the washing up and all the cleaning rather than, a fair share of it, because there's a really fine line between too much and too little. So explaining just bits of your experience to people, if they're willing to listen, because that's the other thing. Sometimes people just don't want to hear it. And sadly, you can't make them. If they don't want to hear it, that's their thing. That's not up to you. You have to kind of try and let that go, and boundary yourself. If people don't accept your truth, question why you want theirs. Why do you accept that they won't believe you or they won't understand you? Why would you accept anyone who, again, is dismissing your emotions, basically, isn't it? Because if you're saying to people, I had a really shitty childhood, sorry for swearing, if you're saying that to people and they're saying, oh no, your mum was lovely, so, well, yeah, but she might be lovely to you, but she wasn't to me, and please can you accept my truth? And if they won't accept that, that's their problem, not yours. Does that make sense? So it's again about boundaries, accepting, sort of knowing what you will and won't accept, tolerating things, and just understanding that some people cannot get into that place, because the other thing is you might be raising stuff for them, and when we raise stuff for other people thanks Stephanie, when I didn't even realise I was apologising, how funny. Interesting. Where was I? So there, when we hold a mirror up to people, maybe they don't want to look in it, and you might be raising stuff for them. So when people can't accept your truth, that's their issue, not yours. You know your truth, stand solid. The difficulty is that it makes you question your truth usually. When you are being confronted by somebody who says, no, that's not true, when you tell them what you experienced, that's really awful, because it's just repeating the same pattern that you've learnt in childhood, where you're wrong about your experience. You weren't abused. They weren't nasty. So maybe, you know, have a think about where you want that in your life and if you do or don't. Ooh, this is a good one as well. I've some really good questions. I'm really grateful for that, because it's interesting to know what people want to know and helps me talk about it. So, can you talk about the golden child, scapegoat and other labels in families? Okay, so if you've done any research, you'll have heard these terms before. They're referred to a lot in self-help books, where people talk about family roles, and certainly within the children. So children in narcissistic families, when there's more than one child, they're often broken down into like different roles where they meet the parent's need. So generally, my research is showing, and it's not proper research, so I'm not going to lay massive claim on it, but research and experience is showing me that the oldest girl is usually the scapegoat. My theory behind that, and it's entirely mine and not based on anything other than experience and gut kind of knowledge, is that the mother gives birth to the oldest child, and all the self-hatred gets projected onto that child, especially when the firstborn girl, who is obviously, sorry, I am talking about maternal narcissists right now. So when the maternal narcissist has a girl, the first girl starts showing any sort of autonomy, they become the scapegoat. And that usually happens around 2.5 or 3. The child is suddenly naughty, they're rebellious, they won't do what they're told, they are vilified, and everything gets blamed on them. So anything that goes wrong gets blamed on the scapegoat girl. It's not always that way, obviously. If there's a paternal narcissist, again, oldest boy generally, or anybody that reflects things that the parent does not like about themselves, the parent will make that child a scapegoat. Golden child for a mother tends to be the boy, and or the youngest girl. The youngest girl is sweet and nice, and the baby, and is generally compliant, and the thank you. These, I'm going to just be really honest, the comments are really distracting, so I'm losing a little bit of track, but I'm really glad that you're making them, so please keep doing it, it's really helpful. Right, and sorry this is moving so much. Ugh. So, yeah, golden child, boy or girl, younger boy or girl, from a mother, this is maternal narcissist. So the girl will be obedient, she'll be compliant, she'll be mummy's little helper, she won't be able to do anything wrong, and as they get into adulthood, or in fact teenage years become really interesting, because the scapegoat won't be allowed to do anything, won't be allowed to go anywhere, will be accused of sleeping around when she's not, will be accused of all the drugs, all the, you know, lots and lots of awful stuff that she'll be accused of, when probably the evidence is very small. Or she may well engage in that just because when you're told so many times you are what you are, then the pattern, it kind of solidifies, or the script solidifies, and you meet the script, sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the golden child may well go out. Oh, Stephanie, I'm really sorry. The golden child in teenage years may well do everything that the scapegoat didn't do but was accused of, and will get away with it. And it will be incredibly unjust and incredibly unfair. It may even be blamed on the scapegoat. The scapegoat may even be, well, it's your fault, you were naughty, she's copying you. You know, all the bad behaviour blamed on the scapegoat. Everything that goes wrong in the family is blamed on the scapegoat. Good job, that's great. Therapy, by the way, vital. If you're not in therapy and you think that your parent is a narcissist, please try and access some, because it's really, really important to try and break the mould and the patterns and the scripts, because you are not what you've been told you are, and you need to find who you actually are, because that's the other thing about narcissistic parents. We're left thinking not knowing who we are or who our identity is. Is it possible to map this across to a narcissist in a workplace environment whereby one member of the team is golden child and everyone else is blamed? Absolutely. Yeah, because that golden child will be in the team, the golden person will somehow be reflecting something that the narcissist likes about themselves, or they're really compliant, or they're inflating the client's ego, they're doing some, it's not client, the narcissist, God, client, wow. The narcissist's ego, they're fulfilling the need of the narcissist by not confronting, contradicting, conflicting anything that he says or she says. So yeah, absolutely. These roles play out all over all the time in all the relationships. They will pick somebody to pick on and to make a scapegoat. It doesn't have to be in a family system. They will find a way to humiliate, smear campaign. They'll position themselves as the victim sometimes, because that's another thing. If it's a more covert narc, they will make out like they're the victim, that so-and-so's been mean to them. They're really, really clever at it, and it's really, really hard to fight against. And that's really the worst thing about it, is that this kind of insidious bullying is impossible to pin down sometimes. And if you do confront it, it's really, you almost make it worse for yourself. So really challenging, really, really difficult, especially in the workplace. But, you know, obviously in the parental system, really, really challenging too. So we were talking golden child. I think I've done that. Scapegoat. And then there's another one, which is called the, what's it called? The invisible child, or the lost child. And that's the child who's essentially ignored. They're neither the golden child nor the scapegoat. They are left to their own devices. They're also neglected. They are they become very insecure as well. Every one of those, by the way, all those roles will have what's called an insecure attachment. The attachment styles are secure, which is obviously the healthy one that we aim for children, and then you have insecure avoidant. Oh God, I'm going to forget it now. Insecure avoidant, ambivalent, insecure ambivalent, and then within those two insecure attachments, you can also have what's called a disorganized attachment. So there'll be disorganized ambivalent and disorganized avoidant, and those attachment styles are really difficult. And when there's disorganized attachment, those are generally where things like BPD start coming into play. And unfortunately, narcissistic parents are really good at creating disorganized attachments in children. So then the next question I've got written down is, what are the techniques a narc uses for control? Wow, that's a really big question. They use gaslighting. If you don't know what gaslighting is, it's a term that was based on a play which was then made into a movie, where a husband and wife are living in an apartment, and the husband has killed or murdered the woman in the apartment above, and whilst he is upstairs rummaging around looking for her jewellery, he turns on the lights in her apartment, which, because they're gas lights, makes the lights in his apartment, where his wife still is, dim. When he comes back downstairs, she says, "Oh, it's so weird. The lights just dimmed while you were out. I don't know what's going on." And he said, "Oh, no, you're going crazy. They didn't dim. Makes her question her reality. So it's a form of psychological control, a manipulation which makes people question their reality. Gaslighting is contradicting what you know to be true and making you question your reality. Gaslighting is drip feeding psychological abuse, and it's horrendous because it makes you trust everything that you know. It makes you trust your judgment. Hi, Nessa. It makes you really question everything that you know, and it stops you speaking to people because you are scared they're going to think you're crazy. So gaslighting is basically the favourite one. And then there is the smear campaign, which the minute you start looking like you might contradict or confront or expose a narcissist, they will start smear campaigning you. So they'll start telling people that they're worried about you because you've been saying some crazy things or things that aren't quite right, and gosh, she was up in the middle of the night counting beads. They'll just make up stuff. They will just destroy your reputation and the perception of you as a mentally stable human, so that the second you turn around and say, he's been doing this, and this, but you have got problems. They'll accuse you of being a drug addict. They may even accuse you of being a narcissist themselves. It's a brilliant switcheroo kind of flip technique they use. They'll accuse you of being an alcoholic. They'll make up all sorts of lies about you, and this goes for parents too. It's really awful. They'll do it to the rest of the family, and sort of explain that tell everyone that you are not well. They are just evil. It's just evil. The smear campaigning, leaving you isolated, especially in an adult relationship. They cut you off from everyone, and then you've got nowhere to turn, and you're completely dependent on them. And that's another thing they use, is the codependency thing. They make you, they remove all your contacts, all your resources. They tie you up in a way that you can't escape, basically. So another thing that narcissists do is called hoovering. Hoovering is when... So I've been obviously doing loads of research recently, and one of the things that people say quite often, you'll hear people say about narcissists, is they don't have empathy. Well, truth bomb, they do. And the worst thing about that is they use empathy to manipulate you, and that's just reading all about it. Narcissists don't lack empathy, they have an impairment in empathy. And that means that they use their empathy to gain something. So if they think that they can find a way to get you on side by showing you empathy, they'll do it. Which I think is sort of how the hoovering comes in, that they say to you what you need to hear, to feel cared about, to feel loved, to feel like they want to make up for things. They may even apologise. But they'll do this. They'll say, "I'm really sorry for making you feel that way. So it's your fault that you feel that way. It's not their fault." Does that make sense? They're not actually taking responsibility and saying, "I'm sorry for behaving like that." They're saying, "I'm sorry you feel that way." And there's a really, really big difference. And it's something to really watch out for when someone apologises, that if it leaves you thinking, hang on, that doesn't sound quite right. You're right, it doesn't sound right, it's wrong. If someone apologises, they say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. The end. No excuses, no buts, no justifications, no making you try and take responsibility. I shouldn't have behaved that way. I'm sorry. That's how an apology happens. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way, it wasn't my intention, because that is horrendously, what's the word? Projection, really. They project it back onto you. They flip it around and make it your responsibility that you've reacted the way you've reacted to their behaviour. So hoovering gets you back in. Hoovering, or even gets you in the first place, is they say what you need to hear. They use the empathy skills they've got to relate to you, to make you feel like you're the most special person in the whole wide world. They do it, they associate it with love bombing, which is when they tell you, everything you want to hear. They make you feel like you're the only person in the whole wide world, the one that would fix them. They might tell you how damaged they are and that, God, you're the only person that's ever understood them. And as a result, they get you on board. And they trauma bond you because they kind of use those things, saying you're the only person that can make me feel the way that I do. And then they might abandon you a bit, and then they come back, and then they abandon you a bit and come back. And so it's like giving you a drug and taking it away, and giving you a drug and taking it away. And it keeps you addicted. And so that's how they trauma bond you. So they use hoovering, love bombing, smear campaigns, gaslighting, trauma bonding. Have I said that already? Lots. And then what they do as well is when you finally see the light and you remove yourself, they use things called stonewalling, where they just cut communication. So you might say, I need to talk to you about X, and they'll just never talk to you again. And that makes people go crazy because you've got no control, because they're not responding, because it feels unfair and injustice and unjustified, and they've put themselves in a position of power because they are not responding to you, whereas normally it's the other way around. And I hate keeping using this word, but it makes you feel crazy because they are stonewalling you to make you beg. They're making you beg for contact. And then you get contact, and then you go, whoa, what was I doing? And then they say, well, you wanted this. You wanted to come back. You're the one that wanted to talk to me, not the other way around. It's very, very clever. The other thing is narcissists use for control. When you finally cut contact, or even if you haven't, they use flying monkeys. Flying monkeys comes from the Wizard of Oz, and the flying monkeys are used to gather information for them. So the term comes from the Wizard of Oz. When the Wicked Witch sends her monkeys out and they go and do her bidding, that's exactly what the narcissist does with people around them, with the family system, or in work, like we were talking earlier about work. They'll send people to do their work, their bidding. They'll find out information for them, which they then use against you. This is also known as triangulation, where they use triangulation to... triangulation, how do I explain that? I've written a blog post on this earlier that's further down the page. Triangulation is when person A says to person B, I need to know about person C. So triangulation is used to passive-aggressively... I need to write a book and read it for audio. What with all my stumbles? Goodness me. Maybe one day. So, blah, 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 triangulation, passive-aggressive confrontation, basically. So what they do with triangulation is say, oh, God, I'm so annoyed. So person C did X, and I'm really cross about it. So person B then turns around and goes, Person B then turns around and says to person C, you've really annoyed person A because you did this. So person C is left thinking, God, I've really annoyed them, and Now it's really awkward because I don't know how to talk about it. And rather than person A being an adult and going, do you know what, it really annoyed me when you did this? So what they're doing there is triangulating and putting that person C in what they're saying is a persecutor role, but actually it's a victim role because they're making them a victim of their triangulation. This is getting really complicated, isn't it? I try and keep it as simple as possible. Triangulation is another method of control. It's a method of domination. It unsteadies somebody. It makes somebody question what they know. It makes somebody feel isolated because they feel like everyone's talking about them. That's what that happens. And flying monkeys is really awful because when in a family system, when you've got flying monkeys coming to you, you then start not being able to trust people that you've known all your life. You don't know what information they're giving back. You don't know what you can trust them with. And that's really difficult because you end up being isolated and lonely and without the family. And as a society, we are so focused on family and family first that when you haven't got that, it's really lonely and very difficult. Jennifer, is there any hope for a narcissist, or are they destined to cause havoc? Are they happy being narcissists? Is there hope for a narcissist? There is, but the chances of getting them into therapy, you've put there, do they ever seek help? The chances of being in therapy, of them seeking therapy, they do go into therapy, but it's not because they think they're narcissists. It's because something's happened in their life where there's a crisis. Like in one of the books I've got, someone talks about a client who came in because he was overlooked for promotion, and the reason that he was overlooked was because of his relationships with his work colleagues, and he was stunned by that because he thought he had good relationships with his work buddies, or colleagues, sorry, and it turns out he doesn't. And then his wife confirms that he is difficult as a character and that his children find him difficult to be around, so he goes into therapy as crisis. What happens in therapy with a narcissist generally is that they come in, they talk about how it's everybody else's fault, they don't take any responsibility, and they find it very hard to accept any challenge to that reality. So yes, they can be treated, yes, they do seek help. How likely it is to be successful is unknown, is I don't know, it's undeterminable maybe. The chances of getting or telling a narcissist they're a narcissist and getting them to go to therapy, no. I can't imagine a narcissist would volunteer for therapy willingly or under instruction rather, unless it's that, usually it's court ordered or a response to some sort of crisis. But then, as a therapist, I dread the idea of a narcissist coming in because should I not pick it up, which I don't know, I might not, but they're very clever. Sorry. I dread it. I really dread it because also the minute you challenge them and they respond negatively to that, I would be really fearful for my career because I think they would try and smear campaign me. So I worry about that. But I don't know. Are they destined to always cause havoc? I think you said. Are they destined to cause havoc? Probably. There is research that says that they enjoy causing distress and pain to their significant others. Really sad because there's a thing in the DSM, which is the diagnostics. I can never remember it. For statistic manual, it's the Bible that medical professionals use. It's an American Psychiatric Association handbook for mental health conditions. There's lots of controversy around it because it's not actually very well conceptualized in many things. But cluster B personality disorders, which include OCD, BPD, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and avoidant personality disorder, I think that's it. The cluster B, this thing about causing harm to their significant others is unique to MPD as a cluster B personality disorder. None of the other personality disorders look to do that. So they pretty much, they enjoy it, which is really horrible. And then you asked another question, was, are they happy being narcissists? I don't know whether I can answer that. Are they happy being narcissists? I do know that the suicide rate amongst narcissists is higher than it is in general population or non-narcissistic population. It's believed and attributed to the fact that the suicide happens when the construct crumbles. So narcissism is used as an ego defense. Narcissism arises out of an abusive or neglectful or even an overindulgent childhood. It's created as a sense of self where a good sense of self isn't created by the parents. It's really long and complicated, but you can read my MA when I've finished it because it's in there. So basically it comes from abuse and or neglect or overindulgence. So where a person does not get help developing a healthy sense of self from their parent, they develop narcissism. So I would say no, they're not. Oh, hello, hang on. I don't know how to answer messages. Sorry, Nessa, I can see you've messaged me, but I'm really sorry, I can't. Let me see if I can do it through the computer at the same time. So what was I saying? So yeah, are they happy? No, probably not. But would they ever admit it? No, probably not. Suicide rates are higher. The construct fails and they can't cope with the fallout of that. So no. Stephanie's asked, what one book would you recommend a narcissist lover, non-boundary, having person to read to help them understand it all better? One book. Is this a child of a narcissist or is this a parent or a partner of a narcissist? Because that might influence my info. I don't know where my book is. My go-to book is always Will I Ever Be Good Enough by Carol McBride. It's absolutely brilliant. I recommend it to all my clients. It explains, but that's really about mothers. I don't know. Thing is, all my books are quite academic at the moment. Out of the Fog. That's a good one. That's a really good one. That explains all the narcissistic behaviours. Start with, have a look on Amazon for Will I Ever Be Good Enough and look around the books. There's quite a few. There's one called Breaking Free. I think that's quite highly recommended. I haven't read it though. Go find Out of the Fog. That's really good. That explains lots of the narcissistic behaviours. You can get that on Kindle. I'm not sure you can get it on in paperback because sorry, I'm just logging into the computer and getting the question. Okay, then you'll look for mine. Go on, give me a chance. I've got to finish the MA first. Okay, so what's my next question? How do I teach myself to stop regressing into scared child mode when the narcissistic family members are harsh, critical, attacking, etc.? Okay, so I would say you would need help with a therapist for that. Oh, that was my chair, sorry. I would say you would need, help from a therapist for that. I would suggest that you need to unpick it. And also, why are you still around those people if they're still perpetuating those behaviours? I would really worry about you being constantly in that environment and wonder how much you can remove yourself. Look at doing grey rock. Look at which question? Oh, regressing into scared child mode, do you mean, Jennifer? Look at doing grey rock method. Grey rock method is the only way to deal with toxic people, or the only way to communicate if you've got no choice but to communicate using grey rock. Basically, it removes all emotion and all detail. You literally answer. It's really, really, really boundaried. It's very difficult because it's very unnatural, because we are, especially if you've been a child of a narcissist, you're conditioned to not have secrets. You're conditioned to give up all the information. Yeah, okay, Jennifer. So using the grey rock method, being very, very boundaried, removing all emotions, saying I think rather than I feel, not accusing, just answering, responding to their requests, not justifying your answers, not telling them how you feel about anything, not letting them see any kind of emotional response from you at all. It's hard, it's really difficult, it's really challenging. The best thing with narcissists is just to get as far away as you possibly can and heal from the damage. I think it's really difficult, obviously, if it's in the workplace. If I was in the workplace, I would, yeah, it does, Lulu. It is brilliant, and it is just about massive, massive boundaries. And if you've been regularly exposed to narcissism, your boundaries will be really blurry. So working on your boundaries is really important. One of the things I'm writing about at the moment, just as like a side thing, is about how do we establish and employ boundaries. It's harder than you think, and it seems like it should be so obvious. But when you haven't been taught to do it, then it's really hard to employ. Jennifer, I don't know how responsible you can be for the rest of the team, other than giving them information on Grey Rock, other than making complaints about the employee in question, keeping a log of everything they're doing, and talking about it. And, oh, do you mean boundaries, Stephanie? If you mean boundaries, yeah, non-existent boundaries. I mean, it's not something we get to have. My pleasure, Jennifer. Lulu, you asked a question about being autistic and narcissistic at the same time. That's really challenging. I'm not sure I'm qualified to give a definitive answer, but I know quite a lot about both subjects. So my feeling is there's a lot of overlap, perceived overlap, between autism and narcissism. But I'm going to say that I think it's unlikely that you could be both. It's unlikely. I don't know that I can really answer that confidently. But they're separate conditions, but there are lots of similarities. Stephanie, yeah, when you add them, it is horrible. Boundaries, trying to learn boundaries is really uncomfortable, because when you're not conditioned to use them, you don't know what they're like, and then you start doing it and people react horribly to them, and so you end up feeling like you're being a bad person, because you've always been told, don't you dare meet your need, don't you dare put a boundary in, don't you say no to me, don't you question anything I do, because you're not allowed. And then the minute you start doing it, or I'll get angry, that's the other thing, I'll get angry, or I'll take things away, I'll withdraw my love if you meet your own need. And that's the hardest thing for a child of a narcissistic parent, is the love gets withdrawn. And that's why children don't tend to question the parenting to start with as a child, because the fear of abandonment or the withdrawal of love is so big that they can't bear it. It's intolerable. There's a brilliant book called Traumatic Narcissism by a guy called Daniel Shaw. He writes about this, and it's called A Complementary Moral Defense. It's a bit wordy. And it's where a child will accept the role of all things bad in the relationship because it stops them No, sorry, Lulu, I'll come back to that. The child will accept that and accept that position because questioning it is too dangerous. So it would disrupt and rupture the attachment. So even though the attachment is rubbish and it's insecure and damaging, the blah 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 blah, the position of being the person who is bad in the relationship between parent and child is safer and easier and more tolerable than the fear of the abandonment. Does that make sense? So it's called a complementary moral defense, and a guy called Daniel Shaw in a book called Traumatic Narcissism. Lulu, no. Autistic people won't do it. It's not the same thing. So autistic people have loads of what's called relative empathy. What they lack is cognitive empathy. So they won't understand why they've upset you. It won't be intentional, and it won't be understood until you explain it. Once you explain it, it shouldn't happen again, but there's a learning process. It depends where they are on the spectrum. It depends what their spectrum needs are. It depends what they stand to gain by facilitating the behaviour or perpetuating the behaviour. So if you tell an autist not to do something because it hurts you and they do it again, there's a reason for it and it's not acceptable. But it's again the same. The boundary's there. You've got to just put the boundary in. So in my thinking, and I do have quite a lot of experience of it, autism is a reason, but it's not an excuse. So I understand why you're behaving that way. I understand that it's hard for you to not behave that way, but you also know the difference between right and wrong. And you know that would upset or hurt me. So therefore, you need to stop doing it. Does that make sense? Lulu, have I answered that question enough for you? While Lulu responds, I'm going to have a quick look at there was a message, I think. Okay, hang on a sec. Sorry, guys. Oh, I thought something came through and it didn't. Or it did and I can't see it. Sorry. Okay. Oh, here. Oh, it's come through to the business page, that's why. Nessa, yes, absolutely. Please ask questions. I totally want them. Oh, Lulu, my pleasure. Great. I'm really pleased that's helped. Don't forget that children of narcissists sadly can sometimes develop BPD as a result. So if that's going on, Lulu, that might be in there too. But if you're concerned, if it's someone you have the power to get help for, I would suggest going to see a diagnostic professional, which I am not and cannot offer diagnosis. I can just tell you what I might see, and then somebody else who's got those powers, more qualified than me, can tell you whether or not they truly are. Okay, so oh wait, hang on. If I've just exposed somebody, I'm really sorry. I didn't read that properly. Let me read you some. Hang on, sorry. Oh, look, I'm doing it again, Stephanie. Sorry. Right. Right. Hang on. Here we go. Let's have a look. What's the next question? Here we go. In recovery from narcissistic abuse, I've realised there is a volcano of repressed anger and pain within me that I'm struggling to allow myself to feel or express, as feelings are shamed in my family. Yeah, I mean, wow. Feelings, emotions are all always repressed and shamed in narcissistic families. You're not allowed to have your own you're not allowed to have your own emotional response. if it doesn't agree with that of the narcissist. So you may get confused because sometimes they're really kind and lovely and caring, and it's why are they being nice to me when normally they're angry with me? And thanks Stephanie, and the confusion is because when the emotional response is that the narcissist agrees with, the narcissist will mirror it, which is when we, as parents, you accept the emotion and you acknowledge it and you allow it to be expressed. So yeah, in narcissistic families, it's really common for emotions to be shamed, especially those that are perceived as negative emotions. If you've read my blog on anger, you'll know that I feel like it's the best emotion in the world and that everyone should be allowed to express it as long as they're not hurting anyone else. It's really normal to really struggle with that. So what we can do is, again, therapy, but obviously it's not always possible. Right. Because we don't know how to express these emotions, and this applies to everything, not anger, because we don't know how to express emotions, what we do is disconnect from them. And then they come out as things like anxiety, depression, OCD, all these different things, because we've never been able to release the emotion. So what we need to do is learn how to connect with the emotion. And that is really difficult if you don't have a bit of help. So this is my trick for connecting with emotion. There are lots of different ways to do this, to connect with emotion, but I've got two that I love and that really work with me and my clients, and I hope they'll help you too. So what we do when we're talking about emotions, so I'm going to think about myself, and I'm going to actually talk about happiness, because obviously that's quite personal. I don't want to really, I need to be a bit boundary, because I know that, I need to be boundary. I don't need to explain it. Haha. So when I feel happiness, I feel it here in my chest. I feel it here, and it's warm, and sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable because sometimes it's a bit unfamiliar to be that happy, maybe. So joy is experienced there, and it's a warmth, and if it was a colour, it would be yellow and orange and red, but in a really mellow kind of lovely kind of soothing thing, like a balm. If it was a texture, it would be very smooth, and it might even have like a fog kind of consistency coming off it, but staying with it. It's not evaporating, it's just there, and it's mythical, and it's moving, and it's on my chest, and it's warm, and it's joyful, and I'm trying to think, if it was a shape, it would just be like an oval, but a flat one, so like an egg that's been squashed. The texture smooth. You can run your hand through the fog. It moves it, but it doesn't disperse it. And then underneath that, it's warm and cool at the same time. Don't know why. Warm and cool at the same time, and smooth, like glass that's really, really polished and smooth. So that's my happiness. So that's where I feel it in my body. What we do with emotion is try and visualize it, because once we visualize it, once we describe it, we can connect with it and we can understand it better. So I had one client who I know isn't watching, and I won't give anything identifying about away anyway, had anxiety and felt it in a ball on her chest. We really visualized it, really described it, really looked at the texture of it, the color of it, the size of it, and all we did was swallow, and it went away. And that became their technique then. For when they were feeling anxious, they would just swallow. And they were feeling that ball of worry, they would swallow. So connecting with emotions that we've been shamed around is challenging the internal voice that says you're not allowed this emotion, telling it to go away in ruder terms if you wish, and really explaining why, well, not explaining, but like describing it. You can draw it, you could make, you could get a rock and paint it. You really connect with it, really, really feel it. And then next time you have something that feels like it might be a flash of that emotion, imagine it, visualize it, think about where it sits in your body. Think about, is it moving? Does it travel? How does it feel in my body? Do I like it being there? Do I not like it being there? What can I do to make it get a bit less or a bit more, if it's happiness, for example? If it's, when it's any kind of emotion, the other thing to do is then rate it out of 10. 10 being high or bad, and low being good. So if happiness, or the other way around, if it's positive. So 10 is a good amount of happiness, 0 is sad. Does that make sense? So when we scale stuff like anxiety, when we say, my anxiety is at a level 8 and I'm really uncomfortable and I'm really unhappy and I don't like it, what we do then is say, okay, so how can we make it move half a spot down to like 7.5 or even 7? How will I know it's at 7? How do I know it's at 8? What does that look like? What can I do? What can't I do? What do I need around me? What's different? What isn't different? And what can I change around me to make it move? What am I in control of and what am I not in control of? So connecting with emotion is visualization, scaling, drawing, really allowing that emotion and challenging the negative thought that says you're not allowed it. Make sense? Oh, do they love their children? Really difficult one. Do they love their children? This feels really. I struggle with this question. I'm really honest. I never know the answer to this. There's part of me that says, yes, of course, because what parent doesn't love their child? And there's part of me that says, well, how could anybody treat a child like that? So I think they love their children when the child is doing what they want. So there is love, but it's not, they don't know how to experience it. They don't know how to demonstrate it. Certainly it isn't unconditional. It's certainly very conditional. And it's something that I don't know, the tales I've heard in the therapy room, that's not what I think love is. And I would not want any child I know to experience love in that way. So I don't know, Lulu, I'm sorry, that's quite a tough one. I don't know if that helps at all, but I think I would question. Maybe they love them the best they can. Does that justify or excuse their behaviour a bit? I think it makes them not take responsibility, because that sounds a bit like something they would say. I loved you the best I could. Well, yeah, but it wasn't good enough, and it's not fair, and it's not okay to do that to a child, and it's not okay to do that to any human, let alone a child. So I struggle. I'm going to come back to you on that, Lulu. I'm going to really do some research. I feel like there's an attachment and a need, but it's not a love that I think we would want or express for our children. So I've got one final question and then I'm going to have to go. God, it's been an hour nearly. Wow. My final question is, has it been an hour? Yeah, because I started at 11. Wow. I think. Oh, I don't know. Whatever. I'm going to have to go in a minute anyway. One final question I've had is, as an adult child of a narcissist, is it normal to worry that you may be a narcissist too? Yeah, totally normal. Oh, Lulu, I'm really sorry. It is sad, and I think that's part of it. So I'm going to come back to the adult worrying about being a narcissist in a second. It is sad, and it's. Do you know what it is? It's a grief. It's a loss. We've lost a childhood. You've lost the ideal parent. You've lost a relationship you've never had. You've been cheated. And in fact, if I do write a book, it's literally going to be called Cheated of a Childhood, because that's what happens. You're cheated of the experience that people that kind of think is a given, that you just have it, and that it's everyone gets to experience love and accept love. I don't know. It's sad. And what part of my therapy with clients is always around the grief of that. And what would a mother be like? What would the ideal mum have been like? What would the ideal father have been like? How would it changed things for you? What would have been different? And working that through really hard, because it is hard and it is really sad and it's really unfair. When I write it, yes. Oh, look, my chair's squeaking again. Right, so last question. Oh, hang on. I'm trying to move this chair and I can't. Last question. Does the adult child of a narcissist, is it normal to worry that you may be a narcissist too? Definitely. One of the things that happens, we, as children generally, all the things that we know and learn, when you write a book, I got the MA first. Okay, so when we grow up, what we learn about ourselves, the world, how we relate to other people comes from our family system. So main caregivers, and that could be parents, foster parents, grandparents, anyone that has influence. We learn from them how we behave in the world and how we should relate to other people. So inevitably what happens when you are the child of a narcissist is you get learned behaviours, and these are also known as fleas. Check yourself for fleas. That's what I quite often say. Because we learn these behaviours and they're not ours. They're not, learning those behaviours are conditioning, and what it requires is a serious amount of honesty and self-awareness. Thanks. A serious amount of self-awareness and serious amount of therapy and working and recognising when maybe you're being a bit entitled, maybe you're being a little bit exploitative or manipulative, when you're doing things that are what you've seen a parent do to get what they need or want, rather than directly asking for what they need or want. So they manipulate their needs out of people. Does that make sense? They manipulate their needs from other people, and you are inevitably going to have to learn, or not have to, but you are inevitably going to learn that from them. And what we have to do in therapy is learn what those behaviours are so that you can correct them, so that you don't feel like the world owes you something, that when someone rejects you, it's not intensely personal, that it doesn't make them a bad person. You know, there's lots and lots of things that we learn from narcissistic parents, but one of them is not narcissism. It's true that in a family system, there is sometimes children do develop narcissism as a result. I'm not entirely sure which child role that is. I haven't got there yet. I don't think it's scapegoat. Scapegoats tend to get BPD. Golden children can also, I mean, anyone in that family system can get BPD actually. And it's quite a broad term. So actually BPD, what does that even mean? But that's a whole different subject. So yeah, it's really natural to worry about it. So I think it's a good thing you're worrying about it, because narcissists who know that they're narcissists don't care. They think it's a positive personality attribute. There is a level of self-awareness, and they are borderline personality disorder, Jennifer. Sorry, I should have said that. Borderline personality disorder, which has quite a lot of overlaps with narcissism, but it's actually completely different. It's horribly stigmatized, but I have quite a few BPD clients and they are brilliant. Great, something else I have to have anxiety. You don't have to, that's a choice. Yeah, lots of overlaps, but the big difference is empathy. My BPD clients have huge amounts of empathy and they don't use it manipulatively. And, you know, I'm not an expert on that, so I don't really want to talk about it loads, because I don't want to say anything that will A, be wrong, or B, upset people or offend people. But yeah, the fear of being a narcissist is definitely real, and definitely a good one in my opinion, because it means you're looking out for behaviours. You guys, I'm going to have to go. Thank you so much for coming on board, and thank you for all the questions. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm going to write chapter 5 of my MA, or 4. Oh no, I'm on chapter 4. And I will come back and do this again soon. Thanks, guys. Take great care. Feel free to message me anything that you want to, and I will do my best to respond. Take great care. Bye.